Hello and welcome to our humble Highland home. Thank you so much for being with me here today. I call this corner of the garden the waste management area. It normally starts off quite well earlier in the year, but it does become a bit of a storage dumping ground as the season goes on. But this is where our compost gold is made and stored, and it's also where we store our horse manure and leaf mould, along with the wood ash from the fire and wood chips for our paths. I soon will have my slimline water butt back out again, which I normally make up some manure garden tea. I've made a previous video about that, so I'll link that in the description below. But today I am sorting this corner of the garden out as I'm starting to make a new plan for this area, as it soon will need a bit of an upgrade. It's not quite made it onto the immediate list of priorities. However, I do like to have a plan and a wee doodle to show Adam, as I will need some of his expertise. And Adam just loves it when he hears me say, "Adam, I've been thinking." I generally get an eye roll and a "what do I need to build? What's my timeline? And how much is it going to cost?" It really does amaze me how Adam can interpret my doodles, as they are not the clearest, but over the years he's managed to take my wee doodles and bring them to life. That's where the composting bays came from all those years ago, which he made even better than I imagined, and they have worked really well. But now, as things change, we need to have a bit of a rethink. As our garden and our growing spaces get bigger, we are producing more organic matter than we can compost. So we're going to need bigger composting bays and bigger storage areas for the organic matter to sit as it waits to be added to the lasagna layers of the compost. We also need some more space for the bags of the composted gold to sit to wait until it's time to be added to the garden. So I'm clearing this area, adding materials to the compost that has been waiting, putting the pots away and untangling the old wigwam pea frame. I want to move everything out of this corner area that I can, but it still needs to work for the growing season ahead. The two green composting cones are where I've stored the leaf mould and manure, but the leaf mould from the year before last is almost empty, so I'm bagging it up so that I can move the cone just up a little bit, and then I can refill with some of the bags of leaves that I've stored in the greenhouse. This is an old dilapidated coal frame that I used in my previous coastal garden. The initial damage to the plastic was caused by seagulls relentlessly pecking to get at the growing contents. They really do cause some damage if they think there's food in there. However, I don't want to dismantle it yet, as I've got a small idea that it might come in useful for, but I shall see, as it might be just a bit too far gone to be able to save. I'll just relocate it for the time being. Next, I'm moving the frames that I normally grow sweet peas up, and I'll put them in the approximate place where I think they'll be going this year. I do like to incorporate some flowers into our growing spaces to benefit our wildlife and of course encourage our lovely pollinators, but also bring some beautiful colour and prettiness to the gardens. At times it's all too important to be productive in the garden, I agree, especially in the current times. But we also need to remember to plant a little loveliness in there too. I've been saving these pieces of wire to make them into wire frames, and they were supposed to be for autumn time last year for additional leaf mould frames, and one still will be, but two are going to be potato towers. I'm always looking for ways to make the most of our growing spaces, and growing at height makes sense, especially in areas that we haven't worked on yet in the garden. We've grown our tatties in various different ways over the years. We've used the black buckets that you see around in the garden. We've planted directly into the ground. We've used sacks, we've used compost bags, and I've also planted in straw and compost using the Ruth Stout method. So as I said, this year we're going to experiment using the potato towers, and if I've got any leftover seed potatoes, I'll use one of the other many different methods of planting the potatoes. These pieces of wire mesh are just long strips, so I'm cable tying the ends together to form the tower. As I said before, they're going into a corner of the garden that I've not yet worked, so it's been underutilised and it gets a nice bit of sunshine. So I think the towers will do well there, as I've grown tatties in this area before, just in the black buckets. I've put the stake in the ground just to make the frame a little bit more stable and to stop it blowing over, and it should become more stable still once we start planting the seed potatoes and building up the tower. It'll be a few more weeks yet before we plant out our potatoes, but they're nice and cosy on the windowsill in the house, chitting away there. We've got two different varieties. We've got a second early, which is a Charlotte potato, and we've got our main crop, which is Sarpo Miria. I'm never sure if I get that right, but that's a blight resistant main crop potato. But we've got the towers ready for them now. I've added a nice layer of cardboard at the bottom just to use as a bit of a weed barrier. And I've seen other people using straw layered with compost, but I don't have any straw, but I do have leaves that I didn't get a chance to chop up last year. And I've also got some of the age chopped leaf mould that you saw me putting in bags earlier, which I will layer with some homemade and shop-bought compost. So the leaves will act as a little bit of a barrier up the sides to prevent the compost falling out, but it shouldn't prevent the tatties from growing through the mesh and the leaves through the sides. And as I layer it up and then add the growing layer on top, so the entire tower should be covered by green foliage as all the tatties grow. So now that I've put everything away and cleared this corner, I can take the time to visualise, to plan and prepare for the future use of this space, which will include a bigger version of what's already here with the compost bays, bigger storage areas for the organic matter waiting to go into the compost, and I would also like to add an area for water storage. We will of course go into more details when we come to do it, but first I better show Adam the wee doodles and break it to him gently. But for now, thank you all so much for being with me here today. Take care of yourself and others, and I'll see you in the next video.